the spokesperson for the Minister of International Relations, Chrispin Phiri, is with me in studio this evening. Mr. Phiri, good evening to you and thank you for your time. First, let's begin with what is hoped to come out of this meeting by the two delegations.
Well, you know, we would start at the point that you may know during the past couple of weeks and probably a couple of months, there's been this perception that the border in Lebombo has been closing and opening, closing and opening. And that's not been the case. It's more been a case of, on the Mozambican side, it has been challenging to process people who are coming over the Lebombo border. And that's where there's been ongoing consultations with our border management agency, with their counterparts, what is the best way to process the people that would go through the Lebombo border in light of the protests that are happening on the other side, and sometimes even disruptions to the Mozambican side. So this now has culminated at this level where the ministers are meeting to say there have been a number of logistical challenges that have affected trade, that have affected our economy as well. What is the best way logistically to ensure that we put in place measures to ensure that that level of trade and those economic relations are almost insulated from some of the activities that are happening currently in Mozambique. Okay. So the meeting would really address some of those issues first and foremost, but also to, at this level, have some level of political consultation around what is happening in Mozambique and what our counterparts see as the best way to resolve it, and also then our side as well, discussing that. And in the light of there having been protests, what's the best way to ensure that those protests are correctly dealt with in a manner that then doesn't affect our side as well. So that's the level of engagement that we will be having with our Mozambican counterparts across the board. As you had highlighted in the intro, it will comprise, the meeting will see delegations from both sides, from various departments, defense, police, Home Affairs itself will have the border management agency there, yeah, and other aspects as well. Trade and industry will have high-level officials there to discuss some of these things, as well as transport. So it's a wide-ranging meeting that will really look at some of the issues that currently play themselves out at a logistical level, and where necessary as well, of course. Often when ministers at that level engage, there are political consultations, and that would likely happen.
Let me try to tease out more information around the actual delegations that are going to be meeting here. Is this strictly a government-to-government meeting? Because you also mentioned the political consultations that will take place. Is Mr. Venancio Mondlane, who is from the opposition in Mozambique, opposition Podemo, will he likely be part of these discussions or not?
It's government to government. Political consultations at a diplomatic level means that the two counterparts will speak about a number of political issues from both sides of the border. And it normally happens. So it's not necessarily to say that we would be engaging other role players in the Mozambican space. No, we would be engaging government to government, getting a sense from the Mozambican government how they see things from their perspective. And at this point, it's important to highlight that in the Mozambican press, as we speak, the Constitutional Council has given an indication that they will be pronouncing themselves on the 23rd of December. And they've also explained why it has taken so long for them to reach this point.
Yeah.
And that's for the Mozambican people to digest and deal with. But what we have consistently said is that give space to the institutional processes in Mozambique to unveil themselves. By way of example, in South Africa, if there's a dispute about a particular election, it would probably play itself out through the IEC, going through its own internal processes. So it's no different in Mozambique. We are seeing the same process playing out. It's just that in this instance, it's the Constitutional Council, which would have a final say in a sense around what is happening with regards to their preliminary results, and then now what is the final step forward.
DIRCO, the department from where you come, is the department that processes people that come into the country. Where am I leading with this question? Is Mr. Mondlane seeking refuge in South Africa? Is he here? And if so, are there indications that he will likely be here for an indefinite period?
So DIRCO doesn't process people who come into the country. It's the Border Management Agency, which is an agency of the Department of Home Affairs. Mm-hmm. They would then say to you, they can tell you, on Friday at 11 o'clock, a guy called Oli Mgambi crossed the border. And they have information and they're able to verify that. We have not received a request for asylum or any of that kind from anyone from Mozambique. And if that opportunity presents itself, it will be dealt with accordingly through the diplomatic channels. But I don't think we are there yet at all. Mm-hmm. The Mozambican people are still engaged in their process. Like I say, it was preliminary results that were announced. And now there were protests around what those preliminary results have revealed. And the Constitutional Council must be given the space to process those disputes and really get to the heart of the issue.
A City Press report has come out suggesting that the American intelligence officials landed at the Kruger International Airport in a military plane, and part of why they are here is to find out the situation in Mozambique and almost use South Africa as some kind of base if there were to be an evacuation process of their citizens that may be in Mozambique. Are you able to tell us any of that detail?
You know, Goli, thanks for this question. It really invokes an interesting dynamic. If this was a Russian plane, for example, we would be chasing a completely different narrative now about interference, or we would be forced to explain what was on the plane, and then next thing there would be a commission of inquiry. But interestingly, because it seems to be a different country, it seems as though there's this country that's here and they might resolve whatever issues in Mozambique and they are the saviors of the day. And I think as colleagues in the media, this is something we must deeply reflect on. When South Africa says we are a non-aligned country, we engage with all nations of the world on various aspects, it should simply be received as that. But here we are seeing an interesting narrative developing. What I know from our counterparts in state securities, yes, they have met with their counterparts from the USA, but it's a routine engagement on a number of issues. Ordinarily, that plane would have landed at Waterkloof, but however, due to some logistical differences with the Department of Defense, not even differences, but some logistical issues, they were not able to land at Waterkloof. In fact, the meeting itself was held at the Kruger National Park, and that's why they then had to land where they have landed. So,
with whom were they meeting? The
Deputy National Security Advisor in the US. So it's a normal meeting that they would have from time to time. And that's really what it is. But, you know, we are here having to now explain it as if some other people are saviors of not. And that's why we say some of these things really require an introspection on how we frame issues. When we don't have facts, we shouldn't speculate about what things are. And I want to leave it at that.
Were these officials taken to Lebombo to assess the situation there? I'm talking about the US officials taken by their South African counterparts?
No, like I say, these are meetings that happen at a regular basis. Security agencies interact with their counterparts all over the world. Yeah. So if we are interacting about how we do, what we do, what our level of engagement should be, there's no need for us to go to a border to see what's happening in another country. On the contrary, though, what I can say is the minister and his counterpart will be going to the border tomorrow, and they will be having an engagement there as well to see what logistical issues are in place to ensure that the challenges that we have been experiencing can be addressed. So at that level...
With which counterpart is Minister Lamola going to Lebombo?
The Mozambican counterpart, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the other delegation from Mozambique. So after the meeting that we have in Malelane, they will then proceed to the border, where they will then also inspect what has been happening there and also then discuss whether the logistical issues that are required to facilitate ease of access at that border are in place and are in order. There
are also suggestions from that article that Lanseria Airport could be used as the evacuation point, and that's why there's got to be sufficient fuel if indeed it comes to a situation where there is a flare-up in Mozambique post the date of the 23rd. That's when the Constitutional Council is supposed to make pronouncements from that country. Can you firm up those suggestions?
No, these are speculative views that are being pushed because someone must be seen as a savior, right? We must afford the Mozambicans and believe that the Mozambicans will trust in their institutions to resolve their own problems. They have their own constitution, their own internal processes that enable them to raise queries as and when there are issues. And that must be how we approach this. Whether someone has an evacuation plan and whether they're going to use a particular port of entry is not for us to speak to. We do have the representatives of such countries here in South Africa and in Mozambique for that matter. They have not voiced that they are engaging in such. But as platforms like yourselves, that's where you require these people to be the representatives, to voice themselves around how they see these particular issues. And maybe they can speak for themselves. But as South Africa, who are most affected by what is happening in Mozambique from a trade and economic point of view, and even people-to-people relations, we really believe that the starting point is to give space to the Mozambicans to resolve this, but also let's put in precautions in place to limit the impact on our economy.
I'm out of time. I have to ask this again. Is Mr. Venancio Mondlane in South Africa, to your knowledge?
I don't know where he is. And if he were in South Africa, we would gladly confirm that he is. South Africa has given political asylum to many leaders on the African continent, and even, you may recall, someone like Aristide, the former president of Haiti. So it's not something that we are adverse to doing, but also it's not something that we have hidden. And if he were in South Africa, we would be able to confirm that. We are not able to confirm that at the moment, and therefore we cannot say that he's in South Africa.
Chrispin Phiri, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for making time to talk to us this evening.